Welcome to Outmaneuver. I'm Faith, and I'm here with his Dudeness. Today we're going to be going over the IG-88 deck that I played in the Unplayable Showcase series.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm very excited to bring you this deck today. This is the deck that I've worked on for a little bit now. I'm using our boy IG-88, the often cited worst leader in the entire game. I'm here to prove that that might be a little over exaggerated. But one of the reasons why I love this deck is that it is actually budget. The entire deck, as of recording right now, late on the 25th, is roughly $30 on TCG Player, which is about the same price as an entire playset of K2 SOs. So truly budget for everything in the deck, including the 9 rares and 3 legendaries, and 10 if you count Target Town when it's a quarter card. I like the deck. It's aggressive. It's all about going base. It has play into other aggression decks because it can control the board better than they can to help push you damage in later. Against control decks, it can try to go wide and dodge the one-for-one removal they have to use. Against a Boba, you just cry, but it's fine. Our boy IG is 5 attack, which is the tied for the most with Darth Vader of any other leader. So he's all about dealing damage.
Well, 5 power is one of the strengths of IG-88. His 4 health is one of his weaknesses. Being able to be removed by common cards like Takedown and Open Fire make him pretty easy to remove off the board. We're running Tarkin Town as our base in this deck. It's going to give us that second red aspect, and it has an epic action ability, which, when you use it, deals 3 damage to a unit that has damage on it already. This is going to be used to remove sentinels that our opponent may have, or to remove some of their offensive units if we need to take some control of the game. It does have 25 health, but since we're playing aggressive, it's okay if we have a little less life because we're hoping to put them to 0 quickly.
All right, now let's talk about the units in the deck. We'll talk about the turn 1 plays first. We'll start off with the Death Star Stormtrooper, the 3/1 for 1. He's 3 attack for 1. It's fantastic. It's everything you want. He does only have 1 health, so against something like Vader, it's not great. But I love to play these guys on turn 1, only if I have another turn 1 play to play along with it, either a second Death Star Stormtrooper or TIE Fighter, the 2/1 in space. If I have both of these in my starting hand, I'll play 1 in each lane, or I'll play 2 of each. Double up on a lane, I am absolutely fine playing that. I can also play some of the 2 drops, such as Admiral Ozzel, 2/3. He can be there to ready in other units later on, specifically Imperial Interceptor and Ruthless Raider. Because if you can ready in a Ruthless Raider, that's kind of a build your own Fet's Fire Spray, which is kind of cool. We have the one of Snow Trooper, I should say, First Legion. He's just there as a filler to throw down if you want to. His ability can be relevant sometimes. Well, I usually will resource something like that. Partisan Insurgent. This is he's a 1/4 that gains raid 2 if you control another red unit, which in this deck is very easy to trigger. And I love playing this guy. I love other aggressive decks, such as Sabine or Leia, to trade into their first turn plays because the 4 health usually means you stick around. And if they want to trade into your Partisan Insurgent while it only has 1 attack, then you can just finish it off with Tarkin down, and you're absolutely happy to do that. Wolf 3/2 with Saboteur and on attack, and when played, he disables healing on bases for the rest of the phase. I mean, a 3/2 Saboteur for 2 is great, and sometimes the healing trigger is relevant, so you've got that going for it. Next up, Viper Probe Droid, another 3/2 that lets you peek at your opponent's hand. The knowledge gained from looking at your opponent's hand can be pretty handy, so you can't really discount that. And of course, being with 3 attack, it can trade into other cards like Sabine and Battlefield Marine.
Looking at our middle costed units, we've got first up is Fifth Brother, who's a 2/4. When you attack, he gains raid 1 for each damage that's on Fifth Brother. This is really helpful. It gives you a potential cap of 5 power on just the on Fifth Brother himself, and he also has an attack that when you on attack, you can deal 1 damage to himself and 1 damage to opponent's unit. This is really good because it can make one of your opponent's units damaged, which you can then remove later with Tarkin Town. And since that damage is going to make his give him raid for each damage, it's going to make his attack even stronger. Up next, we've got Disabling Fangfighter. This is a 3/2 unit in space that when you play it, you can defeat an upgrade. The upgrade you can defeat may be an offensive one from your opponent, like a lightsaber or an experience counter, and it can also be a defensive upgrade like a shield or something big like a traitoress that you want to get one of your units back. This is pretty open on what it can remove, but and it could be used offensively or defensively, but it's still an effective thing to have to deal with what your opponent's trying to do. Being a 3 power in space is nice because it's a little bit harder to defend the space arena, and it can help you get some more damage on base. Our next unit is Starwing Scout, which is a 4/1. It has a when defeated effect that if you control the initiative, you can draw 2 cards. Being an aggro deck, we're going to be wanting to play our cards as quickly as possible. And so, being able to refill our hand with some extra cards can be a great benefit to our deck. Its 4 power as well is nothing to scoff at, and it will make your opponent have to try to remove. Next up, we have Imperial Interceptor, a 3/2 unit that when played deals 3 damage to an opponent's space unit. This is great for removing cards like Green Squadron A-Wing and Red 3. It also has 3 power itself, so it is going to chip away at your opponent's base.
And then next up, we have Saw Gerrera, one of my favorite 4 drops in the entire game. He is a 5/4/4/4 that says your opponent must take an extra 2 damage to the base whenever they play an event. That part isn't relevant a whole lot of the time. You might get 2 damage out of it, and you're lucky to get 4 or more. But usually, it's there to be a 5 attack unit that your opponent has to deal with on the turn before you deploy IG-88 to hopefully draw some heat away from our boy so he can get a clean deployment. Yeah, not much more to say. 5/4/4/4, exactly what we're looking for. And then last but not least is my personal favorite card in the entire deck, the Ruthless Raider, a 4/6 space unit that, when played and on attack, allows you to deal 2 damage to any unit and any base. And this card, as I mentioned earlier, is really great to combo and bring in ready with Admiral Ozzel because it's a build your own Fats Fire Spray. And as we all know, that card is busted. Being able to ping off and finish some unit is great. There's not a lot of units in this game that allow you to finish off a damaged unit and at the right time that can be really crucial. But the most important thing this card does is just put more damage into our opponent's base. Because I will say right now, despite the fact that this card costs 6, you should never, under any circumstances, resource this card in your opening hand. This is a card you keep always in forever because it will win you games.
Let's look next at the upgrades in the deck. First up, we have Infiltrator Skill, which is an upgrade which gives +1/+1 to a unit and gives that unit Saboteur. This is going to be used to get around our opponent's Sentinels, and if we are versing a more aggro deck and we're playing control, we may want to use it to pop one of our opponent's shields. The other upgrade in the deck is Fallen Lightsaber. Fallen Lightsaber gives our unit +3/+3, and it attaches to a non-vehicle. On attack, if it's attached to a Force unit, which we have one, a Fifth Brother, it deals 1 damage to each ground unit our opponent controls. This card is mostly going to be placed on IG-88, who, while not a Force unit, really benefits from the extra 3 health, taking it outside of almost all removal, and gives it that extra 3 damage to now make it attack for 8. This is a huge card.
Yes, and he mentioned it. We're putting lightsaber usually on IG-88 when we deploy. And on our deploy turn, it's very important that we try to stall as much as we can to sniff out if our opponent is sitting on an open fire or a takedowner or any of these. And we're trying to attack and play units onto the board before we deploy IG-88. and hopefully put one of these upgrades on him. Because when he is upgraded, he's dealing a lot of damage really fast. And then the last part of our deck, the events, we'll start off with Force Choke, one of my also one of my favorite cards in the deck. It's a 2 cost, 1 cost if you control a force unit. Deals 5 damage to a non-vehicle enemy unit, and that controller gets to draw a card. The card part is mostly irrelevant because the card advantage in this game isn't nearly as important as other card games. It's all about board advantage, board control, and this card really helps you control the board. It's really good against like Sabine Leader or cards like Kanan. Anything that's annoying with 5 HP that you think your opponent might have, you want to keep it. It's really hard to resource this card. It's also matchup dependent, so knowing what your opponent's going to play and whether or not you should keep Force Choke is a really big skill cap of the deck. Next, next up we have Keep Fighting. One of my favorite cards. This card lets you ready up a unit that has 3 or less power, and it only costs 2. So if you're doing some math there, you can deal 3 damage for 2, which is the best rate in the entire game. And if you can do that on a unit while you have IG-88 deployed, well, now you're just getting even more value. You want to save keep fighting though for as long as you can. You want to delay, do other stuff, and then try to play keep fighting on a unit when your opponent most likely can't do anything to respond to it. Because if you keep fighting a unit and then they kill it off, it feels really bad. It's not great. Don't do that. And then last but not least is the aggression. The 4 cost double red event that allows you to deal 4 damage to a unit, defeat up to 2 upgrades, draw a card, or ready a unit that has 3 or less power, just as Keep Fighting does. You are generally not picking draw a card unless the other 3 options are just completely irrelevant, because like I said, card advantage in this game is not really nearly as important. All the other things actually affect the board, so you usually want to pick those first. But this card can deal effectively with a wing leadered Green Squadron A wing. There's not a lot of cards that can do that on turn 3, so it's got that going for it. It also deals with Iden Versio because you can defeat her shield and then deal 4 damage. It can also be flexible if you have a unit to ready to deal 3 more damage. That's fine. Just an overall pretty flexible card that's doing pretty much everything you're looking to do.
Readying Fifth Brother with both keep fighting and aggression can also be a really great way to get that extra damage in if he's damaged, because he does get stronger and the raid doesn't impact the power with the untap for both of those cards.
Yep.
Next up, let's turn to the sideboard. In the sideboard, we've got Infiltrator Skill, Admiral Ozzel, both cards in our main board that we're adding 1 in our sideboard. We've got 3 open fires, which we're going to use against an aggro deck to pick off certain units like a A-Wing, Sabine, or a System Patrol Craft.
Also, against certain control decks that you know they're bringing in sentinels like Cell Block Guard or System Control Craft, or those are also great ways to deal with that.
We've got 2 cell block guards of our own, which are going to be Sentinel, a 3/3 Sentinel, and they're going to be used to protect our IG-88 safe from ambush cards, particularly like Agent Callus and Bosk, which will effectively remove IG-88 the turn he's deployed. And finally, we've got 3 copies of Bombing Run. This is a controversial ad, but it's going to be good against an aggro deck, and we're going to be able to use it, which will affect some of our units, but we're going to use it when it's going to defeat more of their units than it's going to defeat of our units.
Yeah, I've considered running Seventh Sister in the sideboard as well. I would probably be running it over Bombing Run. You could certainly try that. I've also wanted to try Benthic 2 Tubes in the main deck. I think he's worth a consideration, but I'm not exactly sure where he would fit. But the deck definitely wants more 1 drops, so you could definitely try that if you want to.
If you want to see this deck in action, check out Unplayable's YouTube channel, and you can watch it firsthand in the Showcase series. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash that like button. Thank you for watching. See you next time on Outmaneuver.